Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a massive 5-hour historical epic and distilling it into one continuous, fascinating story of human evolution. We're going to explore the grand sweep of ancient Indian history, tracing the incredible journey of our ancestors from just trying to survive the day to creating profound philosophies that literally still shape the world today. To make sense of thousands of years of history, we'll trace 5 distinct eras: the Stone Age foundations, the Indus Valley civilization, the early Vedic age, the later Vedic shift, and the rise of new religions. Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly did humans on the Indian subcontinent go from sheltering in natural caves to engineering one of the world's absolute oldest and most sophisticated urban civilizations? It's a phenomenal leap, right? And to really grasp it, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Section 1. The Stone Age Foundations, from Survival to Settlement. It's kind of wild to think about, but 99% of human history was spent in the Paleolithic phase. It was strictly about basic survival as nomadic hunter-gatherers, and change was incredibly slow. But then, around 10,000 BCE, during the Mesolithic period, the Earth's climate began to warm up. Ice melted, grasslands expanded, and the animals that thrived on that grass multiplied. So to hunt these smaller, faster animals, our ancestors had to adapt. They developed what we call microliths, these tiny, highly specialized pointed stone tools. So the crucial point here is the Neolithic Revolution. Coined by historian Gordon Childe, this was the absolute turning point in human existence. Around 6000 BCE, humans essentially stopped chasing their food and figured out how to actually grow it. We made this massive transition from being food gatherers to food producers. You can really see the logical chain of events this triggered. With agriculture, they needed better, polished stone tools for farming. They began fully domesticating animals, like cattle and sheep. But here is the most fascinating part. Once you grow crops, you suddenly have surplus grain. How do you store it? You invent pottery. This need for storage, combined with having to actually tend to the fields, meant humans finally stopped wandering. They built permanent homes, which led to the earliest settled villages, like the famous site of Mehrgarh. Section 2. The Indus Valley Civilization, the Urban Miracle. Fast forward to around 2600 BCE, and those early farming villages had transformed into something truly unimaginable. Over 2,000 sites belonging to the Indus Valley Civilization have been discovered. At a time when a lot of the world was still living in relative barbarism, the Indian subcontinent was hosting thousands of highly planned, bustling settlements spread across a massive geography. What's absolutely mind-blowing about this civilization is their total obsession with hygiene and municipal planning. Their streets cut across each other at perfect right angles. Almost every single house had a sophisticated underground drainage system connected to the main streets. And get this, they even had settling pools to trap sediment so the pipes wouldn't clog. They built the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro, making it completely waterproof using bitumen. And they did all of this using standardized baked bricks. Honestly, it rivals some modern cities today. Yet, despite all this advanced infrastructure, the Indus Valley holds a pretty massive mystery. Based on excavations, they appear to have been an incredibly peaceful, mercantile society. We literally haven't found any clear evidence of a centralized standing army, no massive caches of weapons, or even grand temples. Their authority seemed to stem entirely from trade and commerce, rather than military conquest or religious fear. Section 3. The Early Vedic Age, the Pastoral Reset. But as we know, civilizations rise and fall. Around 1500 BCE, the Indus Valley urban centers began to decline, triggering a dramatic societal reset driven by the migration of Indo-Aryan groups into the subcontinent. The contrast between these two worlds is just striking. While the Indus Valley was urban, heavily reliant on trade, and notably lacked horses and iron, the incoming early Vedic culture was completely rural and pastoral. They were a semi-nomadic people who revered the horse, which they called ashwa, and rode in horse-drawn chariots. So we go from brick-built trade cities all the way back to a rural, highly mobile lifestyle. Our primary window into this world is the Rig Veda, which is the oldest compiled Vedic text. Reading it reveals a society that just didn't care about real estate or grand architecture. For them, wealth was entirely measured in cattle. Cows were the ultimate currency. In fact, many words for war or conflict in the Rig Veda literally translate to the search for cows. But despite being a warrior culture, early Vedic society was surprisingly egalitarian. The family, or kula, was the basic unit of society. While they did have different occupational roles, these were flexible and definitely not strictly based on birth. Women held respected positions and actively participated in major tribal assemblies like the Sabha and Vedanta. Religiously, they worshipped personified forces of nature, like Indra for rain and thunder, Agni for fire, and Varuna for water. They were mostly just seeking practical blessings, like good harvests and healthy cattle. Section 4. The later Vedic shift, iron and inequality. Let's see how this builds. Over a few centuries, a single monumental technological discovery completely altered the fabric of this society: iron. Discovered around 1000 BCE and referred to as Shama Ayas, or black metal, iron axes allowed these tribes to clear the incredibly dense forests of the Gangetic Plains. Iron plowshares meant they could finally deeply till the fertile soil. This sparked a massive agricultural boom. For the first time since the Indus Valley, society began producing huge food surpluses, and people settled down permanently to form powerful territorial kingdoms known as Janapadas. Because of iron in agriculture, the entire foundation of society shifted. The economy moved from wandering around with cows to protecting settled farmland. As wealth from land accumulated, the once flexible social structure completely hardened into the rigid Varna system, which was based strictly on birth. And religion? It morphed from simple nature worship into highly complex, incredibly expensive royal sacrifices, like the Rajasuya and Ashwamedha. With these massive changes, the Brahmin, or priestly class, gained immense power. They held an absolute monopoly on conducting these new mandatory rituals. And these rituals often required massive animal sacrifices and huge payments in cattle and gold. As you might expect, this kind of rigid inequality and the heavy economic toll of these sacrifices began building severe tension within the society. Section 5. Rise of New Religions, the Ideological Rebellion. By the 6th century BCE, the extreme rigidity of the later Vedic age inevitably triggered a massive intellectual and social pushback. People were just exhausted by the strict hierarchies and the financial drain of endless rituals. This unrest created the perfect environment for an ideological rebellion. Thinkers like Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, and Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, stepped up and offered a totally new path. They provided a much-needed spiritual exit ramp, teaching that liberation didn't actually require expensive sacrifices or a specific birthright, but rather right action, meditation, and a simpler moral life. And this brilliantly illustrates just how deeply intertwined religion and economics really are. You see, the new iron plow agriculture desperately needed live cattle to actually work the fields, so the endless animal sacrifices were literally hurting the economy. On top of that, the invention of punch-marked coins had created a booming, wealthy class of merchants and traders, the Vaishyas, but under the rigid Varna system, they were denied high social status. So they flocked to these new religions, because Buddhism and Jainism offer them respect and strongly promoted the peaceful environment that's absolutely required for safe trade. This is exactly where the profound concept of ahimsa, or nonviolence, truly takes root. Ahimsa wasn't just a beautiful moral philosophy, it was a direct socioeconomic rebellion. By preaching non-injury to animals, Jainism and Buddhism were directly protecting the livestock that was the absolute engine of the new agricultural boom, while simultaneously undermining the authority of the sacrificial priestly class. It's a real game changer. It is incredible to see how connected it all is, isn't it? A changing climate leads to farming, which leads to great cities, which fall to nomadic pastoralists, who then discover iron, settle down, create rigid hierarchies, which finally sparks world-changing philosophies of nonviolence and equality. So I leave you with this to ponder. When you look at modern India today, how much of its current reality, its incredible urban centers, its complex social structures, and its deep philosophical traditions is still actively being dictated by these very ancient foundations we just uncovered? Thanks for exploring this fascinating historical journey with us.